Hey folks, Gene from Regular Guy Mountain Biking. Ever wonder what the new hot trends are in mountain biking, what's going to be happening in the year of 2017? Well, in this show, we're going to be talking all about them, and it should be pretty cool, so stay tuned. Hey folks, this is Gene from Regular Guy Mountain Biking, where we talk about all kinds of cool things that have to do with mountain bikes, and of course, home of the Regular Guy Mountain Biking Bike Chat Show. In this episode, if you're into tech and trends and cool things about mountain biking, you're in for a pretty good treat. We've got new friend over here, Josh Patterson. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah.
It's always good to get the guest's name right? That's a good sign. Yeah. So Josh is from BikeRadar, and actually, I love to take more credit for this episode, but this is actually all Tony's idea. We all read the BikeRadar articles all the time, and Tony's like, dude, we really got to get Josh on the show. He's got some pretty cool stuff. We got to talk to him, and we got lucky. So today we're going to be talking to Josh about some of the new bike trends that are going to come out for 2017. So, first question I got to ask you before we get too deep in this is, you got 5. That had to have been tough. I'm going to list the 5 for everybody real quick. I'm going to put links, Josh, to all the articles and everything like that over here. But we've got 5 trends. We've got one about plus tires, right? We got one over here about elevated chain stays, which the two are very similar in some things. I wanted to kind of ask you about that later on. Another one over here about adventure all the time, which is cool. It seems like that kind of came along a little bit with fat bikes too. You see people kind of going all over the place with their bikes, just going on adventure. The next one, 4, was one that Tony had a lot of interest in too when you started getting into big data, because it kind of flows its way into the whole suspension and how you're gathering data with suspension. And then number 5, which is a cool one, is cross country goes more kind of trail racing type of style bikes, which are really interesting. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the industry. How are you able to come up with those 5s, Josh?
Going to too many media events every year. Awesome. is the short answer. So these are some of the things that stood out in 2016 from Sea Otter, Eurobike, Interbike, just the trade shows. You keep seeing companies kind of repeating things. And so I decided to put together 5 things for my fellow riders to look for coming to market this year.
Gotcha.
And those were the 5 that kind of percolated to the top.
It does make a lot of sense when you start reading articles and just the web in general. These are pretty big topics across the board. I got a fat bike, well, like last year, this year type of thing. It was like right in the crust, right between the two, and it's pretty different. It's pretty exciting. It's a different way of riding and stuff like that. But I think that kind of stemmed into the 27.5 plus type of area where you kind of got into the article where fat bikes kind of had their, I wouldn't say they had their day, but they certainly shined for a while. It got people interested. But now it's these bigger wheels or tires and things that are kind of taking over a little bit more. And that's an interesting one that you brought up over there. Is that where you see things going more with that article around, like, fat bikes have their niche, they're still cool, but you see a lot of these styles.
Yeah, so I guess, from my perspective, I equate, the rise and kind of plateau of fat bikes in a similar vein as we saw kind of a rise and plateau with single speeds in the mid, 2000s, where it was cool. You had your niche brands that did it, then you had larger brands jump on it. They did that for a couple seasons and then kind of dropped off. You saw the same thing to a greater extent with fat bikes, where you had your core fat bike brands come on board. The big 3 brands come on with fat bikes, and even into 2017, they've already dropped some of their offerings or narrowed their fat bike line. Part of that is winter's not what it used to be. The other thing is. People did gain an appreciation for fat tires, but maybe not quite that fat. And so in that sense, I think plus sizes strike a happy medium. As far as, for your 4-season type rider that's looking for one bike that they can ride on packed snow,
Right.
obviously they're not going to do as well as a full-on fat bike, but they'll do better than like a 2.25 traditional mountain bike tire. But they're, fun in all conditions. I think that's part of the draw, especially for people that like trail-oriented hardtails. So kind of a nice slack 120, 140 fork. 27.5 plus makes a lot of sense in that package, I think.
Tony, you had tried a bike with plus tires once. So what was your experience with that?
So I guess for me, like I don't know, I'm really into enduro and stuff like that. Like, I watch all the enduro guys, I watch the races and stuff like that. And one of the things that kind of like I noticed, from this, I think it was the past couple months. I'm sure you guys have heard of Neil Donahue from GMBN, and he rides a Scott Genius 27.5 plus bike a lot, and he kind of like talks it up a bit. And so I was like, you know what, it really kind of like sparked my interest in the sense of maybe I should try this, because I was kind of turned on by it, but turned off about it about it in the same way. Because how do I say this? Because I came from dirt bike riding, so I really like the idea of a big tire. You got all this grip, it's really forgiving. It's just it feels. I don't know. So coming from dirt bike riding into mountain bike riding, big tires was kind of like sounded like a good idea to me. But it wasn't. Big tires isn't what I know of a bike. Of a mountain bike. The tires are a lot smaller. So when I got on a plus size bike, I just tried my first 27.5 plus this past month, and it was a Santa Cruz high tower, and I loved going down on it. It was very fun going down the descent and everything. It was great. I had a great time, but I just felt like it was just slightly too big. I kind of felt like it was slightly too big in the sense that it was like more like I don't know if I could take it seriously. And I was kind of wondering, what are the odds of, like guys in the pros actually, using this in the enduro world and stuff like that, because I just didn't see like this becoming a thing. Kind of felt too big, kind of like a fad type of deal, and go ahead.
No,
yeah. What do you think about that, about racing and stuff like that? Where are we going to go with the racing industry with these size tires?
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't see them on the EWS circuit, and I think part of it is those riders are they're obviously the elites, and they're very precise riders. They're picking very specific lines, and when you get a tire that's like 3 inches wide, it's not quite as precise of an instrument. Also, they and some of this is also, I think, a technology thing where the way that the plies in the tires are oriented isn't quite there yet. It's getting better as far as casing stability goes.
Right.
So those really aggressive riders that are pushing really hard to turns, they're pretty hard on tires, and they don't want something that's going to squirm too much or peel off or deform.
Okay.
Another aspect to consider is that just as fat bikes kind of trickled down and gave people an appreciation for plus bikes, there seems to be a kind of confluence of quote unquote normal mountain bike tires and fat bike tires. So you're seeing a lot more options come to market this year in the 2.4 to 2.6 range. Now, I don't want to say that's going to kill plus, but those are the kind of tires you're going to see more on the EWS circuit and under a lot of pro riders.
So you're saying tire width between 2.4 and 2.6 is what you're seeing a lot more of right now?
Interesting.
Yeah, that's if you've looked at like stuff coming out of like the Taipei show, one of the early season mountain bike or cycling industry trade shows, there's a lot of that. And I guess over the past few years we've seen a lot of changes in like rim width too.
Okay.
And that seems to be
that's true. You're right.
Kind of a little more standard now. You're seeing a lot of companies settle on like 30 millimeters internal, which is pretty much good for a 2.25 up to like a 2.6. So it's good to see. I don't want to use the word standardization in our industry, because the minute I say that, things will change.
Like that, man.
Yeah, exactly. But it seems to be there seems to be a bit of consensus that is what works for a broad range of riders.
Well, let me run something by you real quick. I'm realizing that I don't know. We're going to be chatting. I don't know if we'll get through every single one of these because so we can go on all night. But there was one topic because I want to run this by you because I had read about this before I had read your article, and then you mentioned it, and I'm like, okay, I got to talk to him about it. 26 inches, but going to the threes because I run a 27.5 Remedy 8. And then I'm like, man, I wish I could have gotten the plus because I would like that kind of extra meat because I'm not racing. I'm not, just like you said, it's cruising, it's cozy. What's going on with that, dude? Is that just going to be a niche? Is that just like something like, oh, that was cute, let's give it a try? Or do you really think something's going to happen with that size?
So I think one of the most underrated, as far as innovation goes, one of the most underrated companies is definitely Surly, because they kind of push the envelope and bring these things that sometimes stick, sometimes don't. So they brought 26 plus right. to market before anyone else was even thinking about it. And there's been kind of some murmurs about it here and there. When Rocky Mountain launched their enduro bike, they touted the fact that it was 26 plus compatible. It's a 27.5, like standard 27.5 inch wheeled bike, but it can take 26 plus tires. Well, most 27.5 plus bikes can, but it was, and there hasn't been a lot of interest in that.
Well, it's tough because it seems like it's more of an upgrade. Like, I'm not going to go to the shop and buy a bike with a 26-inch wheel that has a 3-inch tire. Like, it seems like it's more of like a guy like I'd have to go and buy a new set of wheels. It's an upgrade type of thing. And so if it's just going to be an upgrade and not something a manufacturer is going to knock off thousands and thousands and thousands of, I don't know how many people are going to kind of latch onto it, right? I mean, there's only so much money in it if it's only going to be for a niche.
Yeah.
It certainly seems that way to me. And we haven't seen a lot of new 26 plus tires come out. And yeah, like you said, it's most of these trends are driven by the parts that companies want to put on the bikes when they sell them.
That makes sense.
And that just seems like a very, very small market still.
Yeah.
So
all right, that's kind of what I was thinking with it, but I wanted to run it by you because I was able to see that connect. I'm like, okay, cool. So look, a couple of them that we really definitely wanted to talk to you about. One was really the following one, the elevated chainstays, and that's only because it seems like a lot of the frames, they want these shorter chainstays now. They want this slacker head tube so you can kind of like descend, but they want this playful back end, plus they want plus tires. So you're seeing some really unique designs, and then I'll add another plus to that. The fact that we can go one by now, there's no front derailleur, and you have more flexibility on how you can run the chain and just the linkage in general. So that seemed to be another good one on that. Is that where you see things are going now, really making these different type of chainstays?
I think it goes hand in hand with plus, right? So it's and I think when that article went up, someone pointed out, well, this is nothing new. There were companies in the, like the old Yetis and other bikes that had elevated chainstays, and well, it's the same, but it's different because they were doing that because at the time they had drivetrains with 3 chain rings, and they suffered from horrible chain suck. Right. So elevated chainstays were a way to prevent chain suck. You essentially got rid of the chainstay. Now that's not an issue. Like you said, one-by drivetrains are kind of driving suspension development and frame development. So if you can move that stay up where the front derailleur used to be, you can kind of get a little more real estate there to package those big tires. So you've seen that more from Yeti on the SB5 and from Salsa on their wood smoke, their hardtail. To name a few. But again, I think that it's going to go hand in hand with some plus bikes when they're really trying to get the back end short. Right. I don't think you're going to see manufacturers adopt that as the norm just across the board. It goes hand in hand with certain plus bike designs, I think.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
So it's not something that you would it's not something you would ever expect to see like on just a regular 27.5. This has to do something completely different market then. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So now how is I was kind of wondering because I was told that the longer the chainstay, technically, the better it climbs. Is that correct?
I think like everything in cycling, it's one of those it depends things.
Okay, because you can shorten it up here, work out the geometry this way or that way type thing.
Yeah, it's not as easy as one number, and that's always what people want, I think.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Longer chainstays can have a benefit when climbing, especially for taller riders.
Yes.
Because as your seat post goes up and backwards, so does your center of gravity.
Okay.
And I think people have started to notice that with large, extra large, extra large frames, and really short chainstays like you're seeing on some trail bikes these days, where you can effectively have your seat behind or at your rear axle, which is really bad for climbing.
Okay.
So
Gotcha. All right, that's interesting. I'm glad we asked that. That's
because it's a tough science to figure out. I mean, you're right. It's not just like very black and white where you can just say that, okay, this chainstay means climb, this chainstay means manual. There's a lot more to it, type of thing.
And when I read the article, it almost made me think, well, could these elevated chainstays become a real thing? So I'm glad we got that clarification. Because when I read the article, I wasn't too sure what was going on with that. But cool.
And we got to run this one by you because I know, Tony, you were all psyched about this one.
Oh yeah.
Right. The big data stuff. I'm a computer nerd. Tony saw this. He's like, oh, we got to ask Josh about this thing. What? Go ahead, Tony. I know you wanted to ask him about this.
Well, see, okay, because I'm not this crazy tech guy. I would, but one of the desires I think of all of us mountain bikers is that we could set our suspension the way we would want. The way that it's best for where we ride. You hear about, when you watch all the pros and you talk to all these guys who've been riding for a while, they ask you questions like, so what do you set your suspension at? How do you dial this? How do you dial that? And you're just like, I just ride my bike.
I push it like this.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like when I heard this was coming, I'm like, dude, this could open up a whole new world for me in the sense that I can maybe have a whole new riding experience because now I can rely on a computer to tell me what to do. However, not my reservation, but my kind of what I'm scared of is I'm gonna see all these data in my phone because it said it's an app, right? That's gonna be on your phone that you can read and how to adjust everything. Correct?
So you're talking specifically about the Corks Shock Wiz.
I'm sorry.
Right?
Yes. The Shock Wiz. Yes.
Which is So that is going to be like app based on your phone, or is app based. It's out now. So
now, have you seen? So my question was, have you seen how is a guy is it going to be easy for someone like a guy like me with not much tech savvy in that sense to go in there and kind of adjust everything? I'm reading it. I'm kind of picturing all these different stats and data and stuff that I'm like, what does that mean? So in a sense, I'm still the odd man out because I don't understand what the heck any of this means. You know what I mean?
So I think, and I've written dozens of articles about how over the years about how to set up your sag, how to adjust rebound, how to set compression damping. And I think at some point people just gloss over that stuff. It's still, to many riders, seems like this dark art. Yeah. And I think this is the first product that could really break through that barrier because you can see it, you can adjust it, and get feedback from it right there. Okay. It's not a manual. It's not someone talking at you at a shop. It's you in this app, and it'll say, too fast, too slow. Not to say it'll get you 100% there, but I think it'll get you in the ballpark, which is what it's designed for.
Because that's the tricky part. I mean, so the theme of the channel is, regular guy mountain biking. Okay, so regular guys. I mean, that's exactly where Tony was going. Like, look, man, I mean, we're lucky if we can get to go out on the weekend, let off spend the whole day riding to adjust our suspension to ride. We're happy we got out. So that's why this tool is so exciting to guys like us, because you don't know what you don't know. So if sometimes someone will ride a bike and say, this doesn't feel good, I hate this bike. And it's like, well, you didn't have it tuned correctly. But how do you know? And it's not something you can go to a bike shop and do either. I mean, because how do they know that? You can't take them with you, and they don't. So I think this is huge. To help people. But I think Tony brings up a very good point. If it's too complicated, then we're right back to all the articles you were mentioning before and everyone glossing over, going, I have no idea what the hell this thing means right now. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. The interface is very user-friendly. Basically, you're just trying to get it in the middle, It's like fine tune it, too fast, too slow.
Guitar tuner.
It's kind of like a chromatic tuner, but for your suspension.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's not something that everyone's going to go out and buy. It's a couple $100. What I see is probably your shop. You go to your shop and say, hey, like, say you buy a new bike.
Right.
Go to your shop, rent this for a couple hours for a couple bucks on your trail to get your suspension dialed in
Gotcha.
and bring it back. Or mountain bike clubs, those kind of things. Or if you've got that one guy in your group of friends, the tool nerd.
Right, he'll have it.
That's me.
Yeah,
that
he'll
has
have
everything.
it. Yeah.
Go to that guy.
What other big data? Because I also see you had some stuff going on there with handlebars and what was it? With,
I had a question on that.
Yeah. What's up with that stuff?
Yeah, because I'll go ahead.
So that's more. A lot of these things you're going to see aren't necessarily consumer facing. It's data capture for companies. When they're designing new products, you're just seeing a lot more use of data. Not just like in the lab. You're seeing it actually out on the trails. Because there's certain forces. I think most engineers would agree that you can't replicate in a lab setting. You have to be out in the field as it's being used and ridden. So you're seeing a lot more data capture on frames, suspension, and components.
Gotcha. Tony, do you want to ask him something? Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, because he made it. You made a comment. And I just kind of was in the article, and it's strong without being the same system that measures flex. I guess you guys were. I guess so. The data that you guys are gathering, it's measuring the flex, and I'm like, why wouldn't they be able to do that in the lab as opposed to being actually in the field? Like how.
They were doing both. In the case you're talking about, the Renthal's telemetry system to measure flex. Yeah, they were doing both. But again, I think it's one of those things too. We have our controlled laboratory setting data, and then they're seeing how that was used. Actually on the trail, where that corresponds to different riding forces.
Gotcha.
So in layman's terms, you had them work before they were working in the lab. They were just going mostly off that data, and then they would manufacture the bars, and people were like, wow, these are too harsh, you know what I mean? So they were kind of like, now they're just taking that extra step so that to kind of mitigate that from happening. So
Smart.
We get better material. Are they working on material, the strength of the material? Is that what they're trying to figure out there?
I think in most of those cases, yeah, you're using like a real world scenario to kind of give you better or not necessarily better feedback, but a broader picture.
We're still at the beginning of 2017. Okay. What else do you think we should keep an eye on? What other trends do you think are like I said? I mean, it must have been tough to come up with the 5. It had to. I mean, like you said, you're so many different places. There's so much stuff coming out. But if the list could be a little bit longer, or can you look into the future for 2018? Like, and also, if you don't mind, again, Tony brought up a good point, really good point. This is very much focused. That's why we wanted to have you on the show. Regular guy mountain biking. A lot of times we don't get to talk to folks like you that are actually really in the system over here and really looking at this stuff. So this is like a huge call for us. So what else should we be looking for that we might not be able to? I can't get to all the shows, So 2 things come to mind. Number one is, I think a lot of us in the industry and in media have been talking about the death of the front derailleur for a couple of years now. Totally with you.
It's, and people are, get up in arms about it. Other people are like, good riddance.
Yeah.
Other people are, kind of upset because it hits them kind of where it hurts in their pocketbook because, SRAM's 12-speed drivetrain isn't cheap.
Yeah.
Look for that to change this year. I think you're going to see more affordable, wide range options from SRAM, and because once you see awesome. Like a say like an X1 or even a GX level 12-speed drivetrain from SRAM, it's game over.
I love my GX11. My GX11 speed, I got no complaints. It rocks, and again, regular guy. I'm not worried about ounces here. I'm really worried more about this. You know what I'm saying? And I'm glad to hear you say that because I think that's really where people want to see things. It's simple. It works good. Plus, not for nothing, if you do the math, you're still getting the same gear ratio. You're still getting the same range because of that big plate they put in the back and the way they're doing things. So you don't lose that much. If in some respects, maybe not even anything.
Yeah, especially with going from for SRAM on their 12-speed, going from 10 to 50. I mean, that'll cover a significant spread, totally. On par with any 2x system. So, once that trickles down, and I would, be very surprised if it didn't trickle down this year.
Cool.
You're going to see, Shimano will have some catching up to do. So that's one thing I'd look for is more affordable 12-speed drivetrains,
Sweet.
Which I think everybody's excited about. On the other end, I think you're going to see more electronics come into biking. So again, you've seen, Shimano has XTR Di2, XT Di2, which is, slightly more affordable. You've got a electronic seat post, electronic dropper from Magura.
Right.
KS
so
also.
cool.
Yeah, it looks
has
cool.
one.
Yeah.
That was great.
Those are both early attempts. I think they both have some issues. That are, they're not, fully formed yet, I would say. I think you're going to see more use of electronics for things like that. And you might even see the first completely wireless mountain bike drivetrain.
Really? That's
So especially if you're going one by, you only need one derailleur to operate. So that's another thing SRAM could have up its sleeve. We'll have to see. But again, that would be on the very high end of the spectrum.
Now, I guess because one of the things I love about mountain bike riding is that it's so, I guess, freeing. You know what I mean? Like when you think of mountain bike riding, you're like, dude, I could go to my local trails, or I could go on like a 30-mile ride in the wilderness and camp out. You don't got to worry about electronic failures or anything, to that degree. So I guess what I'm saying, I feel like, if we go too electronic, we might lose the beauty of mountain bike riding. So how reliable, I guess, are these parts going to be, and how much, and I think a lot of guys in mountain biking may actually feel the way I do. So how much of a market do you think that there actually is for this like electronic, takeover in a sense?
I think you're absolutely right. I think, there's every time a new electronic part comes out, people are worried about reliability and rightly so, and about cost. And I think for your average mountain bikers, most electronic things that I just mentioned are going to be very marginal gains.
Even like the theme and the passion of mountain biking. I mean, I did an episode on e-bikes. All right, I know it's quite a bit off of an electronic derailleur, but I mean, and I literally had a guy on the trail, like verbally say, "Oh, Gene, you and your e-bike, stop doing your videos. You're ruining it for everybody." I'm like, "Whoa, dude, we're just having fun." So, what about the purists? But let's leave money aside. Do you think this is going to be something that the purists are going to say, oh, you know, I'm going with this?
Yeah, I guess my counterpoint to that would be, I assume this purist rides a rigid single speed because
thank you.
Anything else would be sacrilege.
Thank you.
It's a total spectrum, right? I think the biggest issue isn't going to be people that are turned off by the electronics. If we look at Shimano's XT and XTR Di2 systems, they're pretty bomb-proof, and those batteries last a really long time. I mean, you measure battery life in those in months. You can easily get through a 7-day stage race on one charge and have plenty to go. I've heard stories of Shimano athletes in the EWS like going, multiple races, and that includes training time between races and not charging. So the battery's not the issue. Reliability, I think they seem to have that down too.
Gotcha.
But it's really cost, and then people that might be like you, they said it's just a step too far, or it also might be people that are like I know how to work on my mechanical drivetrain, and I'm fine with that. I don't need to learn.
That's true.
I don't need to use an app to program my rear derailleur. That's more than I need. So.
Well, this is going to be a tough one. This is a tough show to end because I really do enjoy talking about this, and it seems like we only just got started on some new topics. So, first of all, before we go any further, I want to make sure we thank Josh for jumping on this call because a lot of our folks that watch this, Tony has a channel, MTB Drop-In. This is Regular Guy Mountain Biking. We work together a lot. But a lot of the subscribers are very similar, that they really are into this kind of topic. So I'm also going to throw this out and hope that maybe we can talk to you again sometime because
Sure.
My hard drive is going to fill up on space on this computer if we keep on going over here, because we could talk all night long. But this is great. So let me make sure I put this all out for everybody. Number one, so folks, Josh writes for BikeRadar. There'll be a link to the article that we talked about today in the description. If not, I already have it up on the screen already, so we can make sure, if you haven't read it already, it's a great article. That's why we put the show together around that. So, Josh, in closing, just real quick over here, anything we should let our folks know about tech in general, or right now we're pretty much just gonna look at what we have coming out and hopefully enjoy everything we have so far?
Yeah, what I would say, I guess my takeaway would be that there's, really never been a better time to be a mountain biker. You've got, you're spoiled for choices.
Yeah.
So do your homework when you're shopping. And also, as far as the components go, even if you can't afford the best stuff, the trickle-down tech that's coming out now makes entry-level and budget bikes incredibly good.
Awesome.
I just reviewed a bike this past week. It was like a $2,000 bike, and oh my gosh, just the Shimano drivetrain and the brakes. I'm like, my bike's like $5,000. This one's like $2,000, and it was just, oh my god. I can attest to that. It's just cool. Amazing what's happening.
Well, that's great, folks. All right, so the regular guys, we're gonna win out eventually. It's gonna be awesome. All right,
we're gonna get it.
Josh, thank you so very much. Hey, folks, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you read up on the article on BikeRadar. Check out all of BikeRadar's information. Again, I'll have links for all over the place. Also, as always, check out Tony's website. And keep the party on the pedals, my friends. And we'll catch you later on in the next episodes. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Have a good day, guys.